I've coached people a lot lately more because we're talking about transferable skills. And I tell people before you even write your resume, the number one thing you want to do is identify your transferable skills. And once you identify your transferable skills, I like to do something called reverse engineering. Then I like to take that skill that I've identified and then I put it into the job search engine, and I find all those jobs that come up with those skills. And then that helps me to kind of fish a little bit, cast my net a little bit wider, because now I'm not limiting myself to a job title. I've used my transferable skills to see other areas and other industries that I could be useful in and gain employment in.
Welcome back to the Neurodiversity in the Workplace podcast. My name is Krista Deguffroy. I'm a senior consultant here with NITW. Neurodiversity in the Workplace is a nonprofit neuroinclusion consultancy. Our mission is to help companies create more neuroinclusive programs, hire more neurodivergent individuals, and create better employment outcomes for everyone. I'm joined today by April Ogden. April is a career coach and disability inclusion advocate. She also works with many executives and leaders on how to create more neuroinclusive environments. April, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
April, I am so excited to have you today on the podcast. I have been really fascinated by the content you share on LinkedIn as well. One of the things we'll get into today is how AI as a whole can either be a really helpful tool or it can be a really scary hindrance when it comes to navigating job searching for individuals. But I want to start off with something you have in your LinkedIn. I'm actually going to read it for our audience, where you say, "My work lives at the intersection of innovation and humanity. I use AI to remove barriers, simplify the job search, and make career navigation clearer and more achievable." Can you share a little bit more about that and tell our audience what you mean by that?
Yeah, so that's a mouthful, right? But basically, I am a career coach, and so I want to bridge that gap between career coaching and humanity. And so one of the things that we're in this AI world right now, and so people are having a tough time, and I've seen it break a lot of people who have not been able to get work or secure employment or even keep employment. And so what I like to do is be very innovative and take a person through each phase, whether it's through the application phase or whether it's the interviewing phase we'll talk about a little bit later. And I want to add some humanity to that because I love AI, but I think it's stripping us of just have that humanity piece of it.
Mm-hmm. I think AI is so fascinating because it's not something we can opt into or opt out of anymore. Yeah. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
I take a photo on my phone and I'm getting told, hey, why don't we use AI to enhance this?
Yes.
Now I'm worried that my photo looks bad if I don't use it. But I'd love to get your perspective on how maybe the navigation of employment applications or even what it's like in the workplace and how AI started to sneak in there kind of around every corner.
Okay, so in my personal opinion, AI snuck in when it started being where after COVID, we started seeing a lot more applicants. And more applicants mean more work for our HR leaders. And that, as a result, HR leaders couldn't keep up with it. The manpower to sift through. You put an application out at 9 o'clock in the morning, by 5 p.m. you got 600 plus applicants. And so human resource managers started using AI to sift through qualified candidates. And that started the whole, let's see who's a qualified candidate based on keywords. And that's my personal opinion of how it really just kind of got out of control. It's a useful tool. I love it. And I think HR can definitely benefit from it, but I think it's kind of gotten away from us from that point all the way through how we manage performance.
I resonate with that a lot. One of the things that we do when working with our partners is we try to look for those neuroinclusion pitfalls, or sometimes where we can make very small tweaks to greatly improve the process, and not just for neurodivergent individuals, but oftentimes we make these changes and they're beneficial for everyone. Those universal design principles. And I loved what you were just talking about with using AI to highlight those qualified individuals, but oftentimes those qualifications or putting those qualifications on a resume, it's a learned skill.
It is.
It's not something that is just intuitive to everyone. It's not something that always highlights transferable skills. I'm wondering if you've had to coach people on that.
I've coached people a lot lately more because we're talking about transferable skills. And I tell people before you even write your resume, the number one thing you want to do is identify your transferable skills. And once you identify your transferable skills, I like to do something called reverse engineering. Then I like to take that skill that I've identified and then I put it into the job search engine and I find all those jobs that come up with those skills. And then that helps me to kind of fish a little bit, cast my net a little bit wider because now I'm not limiting myself to a job title. I've used my transferable skills to see other areas and other industries that I could be useful in and gain employment in. And also skill-based hiring, that's the number one thing. You need to know your skill. Or skills, rather, I should say. So you'll be able to go to those companies. If you don't have a degree, now you have an opportunity to use your skills and add those to your resume so you can get that interview.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of putting the skill in and seeing what comes up. And I think, many individuals right now, we're recording this in November of 2025. We're seeing a lot of layoffs. We're seeing a lot of downsizing just in the employment market. So we see people with career-long roles who now are having to look for something for maybe the first time in 10, 15 years, et cetera, and might not know where else to go besides that job title.
Yes.
So I think using that great tip about putting the skill in and seeing what other types of role match can really help so many people.
It is, and a lot of people have found it very useful, and there are a lot of free transferable skill analysis out there. I know Department of Labor has one, so I always encourage people to start there first, and there always, of course, are some tools out there you can pay for, but start with the Department of Labor and use that transferable skills analysis.
Love that. I know when we were talking a little bit ago, you had mentioned helping leaders understand what these transitions are like, bringing the humanity back to job searching and employment. Are there any lessons that really stick with you during your time that you've been working in this that you'd like to share? Yeah,
I found the most successful leaders are those that are very show empathy. And so you don't have to be an expert, but you do want to have an ability to show empathy and empathize with people, because these are just some very tough times, because you can have an employee and maybe the performance may slip at this point because they have so many other things on their mind. They can't focus. We're in the season right now for performance reviews, and we go back to talking about AI, and now we're implementing AI performance review tools. But having that empathy, saying, okay, this is more than just a person. This is more than just a KPI. Let's look at the whole person. So having empathy is something I strongly stress with leaders. And I had an opportunity to speak with Amazon and some of their leaders and a couple of times, and that's what I stress the most, having that empathy.
Yeah. I think empathy is something that, we hear a lot about it in the HR world or in circles about what it means to be an empathetic and oftentimes an authentic leader. Yeah. And it can still be really scary to bring those parts of ourselves to work. It is. It requires a lot of vulnerability to share that and to be willing to take on the emotional side of hearing people. I know for me, I spent many years in HR, and I identify as neurodivergent with high rejection sensitivity. It's really difficult for me. So putting myself out there is scary. There's a lot of emotional labor that comes with that. Have you encountered that in any of your coaching?
Yep. And when I'm working with leaders, I tell them you have to create a safe place, a psychologically safe place for that to happen, where people can feel, where they can disclose a disability, or they can be themselves. They could have a different way of communicating and not feel like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or people won't get it. And so the only way that's going to happen is creating that safe place. And this is one of my things. I truly believe more people would disclose a disability if we had more safe environments.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the prevalence of disability and the knowledge of people recognizing that they are living with a disability, or that they may even be a caretaker for someone that has a disability, can be really scary to share.
It is.
It can be really scary to put yourself out there and think that it might not be held against you, or something that maybe unconsciously shows up in that performance evaluation. So I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing to reiterate the importance of those safe spaces and reiterate the importance that, you may live with a disability, or you may have an employee that's living with a disability, but that does not hinder them. It's part of who they are. And, we love to talk about the disability community, that it's the only club you can become a part of at any time.
That's so true.
With or without your consent. And that it's just something that I think we all, as human beings and professionals, need to be considerate of and empathetic about.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree.
I know I started to go down the route of AI being bad, but maybe let's talk about there are some good things with AI.
Really
are there any tools or practices that you've been really fond of that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I'm a career coach, and so I really like to have people to use ChatGPT. It's just the first thing I trained on, and so I really teach people how to use it. It's not just about okay, well, write this for me, write that. So I really break down how to prompt. I just finished a course in prompt engineering and how to prompt, and so I really like to take people down that road, whether it's an individual who's searching for employment, how to maintain your performance when you're working, so you can use that for your performance metrics. So that's what I like to do. Even with leaders, I like to show them how to use AI responsibly to know how to help those individuals who have disabilities that work for them.
I really like that. One of our things that we have at NITW is we have a segment of our team that does success coaching. So they work with individuals who are hired at some of our partner companies, as well as managers who are leading these employees. And AI comes up a lot.
It does.
How do we use this? And some of the things that I've heard recently from new hires is that they're using it to help generate the flow of check-ins with their manager. Because performance management shouldn't be a surprise. We should know how we're doing, and especially for many of the employees that I know who are ADHD or odd ADHD, they are using it to create the check-in moments. Yep. What do I need to cover? What am I doing well? What am I not doing well? What's the 30, 60, 90-day plan? And I think, for some people who may be neurotypicals, that seems intuitive, but the reality of those check-in meetings is they don't always go to plan. Sometimes we start talking about, your holidays or the game or kids or pets, anything but the actual performance. Yeah. So using those prompting to generate that check-in, I find extremely helpful. And I love to see it being a practice that both our leaders are using, but as well as our employees.
Yeah, it's very helpful, very helpful. And just keeping track of what you're doing. I call it the I Love Me book.
Tell me more.
So the I Love Me book is basically where every day you're writing out what you've done that either helped you as an employee or a teammate or the organization or people that you serve outside, maybe a partner, and you're tracking your performance. And then you want to sit down and have an opportunity to speak with your supervisor and share that. And so I create like a Excel spreadsheet where you're just tracking that data. And then when it's time for the performance review, you're not scrambling trying to remember what you did. And so you want to just write down everything. You don't want to just leave anything out. And you always want to tie it back to, number one, your performance evaluation or metrics or expectations, I should say. And then also how it's going to help your team, your organization, and your partners.
I love that. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I heard another really useful tool from a current employee who had said that they just had a big manager change. So the manager who had been with the department for many years, kind of knew everything about the department, had left. They were retiring. And so a brand new leader was coming in, and the employee was like, great, I'm excited to sit down with my new leader. Help my leader and me discuss what my goals were, what my goals are for the KPIs and what to expect. And the leader said, I really don't know. I don't know what the goals are. I'm new. I just don't know. And the employee was struggling to say, how do I define what my goals are when I want to make sure I'm meeting the expectation of someone else? And what they worked out with their coach was using, I don't know if it was ChatGPT. I'm going to assume it was, so I'll give them the credit. But they used ChatGPT to identify in the job description what they thought some of the directional goals are, what they found based on the skill sets, based on the company, based on everything that was in their job description. They helped create a dialogue that navigated those goals with their leader. And the leader just shared how much they appreciated that. Because it was almost like someone uncovered, we call it the hidden curriculum, but uncovered the story behind the job description, the actual meat and potatoes of what they were doing, and figure out what those goals were.
That's so important.
Before ChatGPT or before AI, for someone like me who is ADHD, that would have taken me forever to do, because it's not how my brain works. I'm not a linear thinker. And I just really applauded that person using AI in such a way that helped them and helped their leader figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, it's a very useful tool. And I tell people, once you learn how to prompt, that it becomes a whole lot easier.
Oh, I think I need to take this course. If you had to say what the biggest takeaway from taking this prompting course, what would it be for you?
It just really got me out of the mindset of thinking, just asking ChatGPT to do something for me. It really forced me to think about how I communicate, because whatever you put into ChatGPT is what you get out. And so you have to really think about how to communicate with even AI. And so that's what I got out of it. It's more of a communication tool, if you will. And based on what I'm putting in is what I'm going to get out. And so I have to go back and reiterate a lot and okay, no, this is not what I meant. This is not what I need. And I got to get more specific and get into the weeds. And the more I do that, the better the results are. And then I can use those results to help someone or myself or whomever I'm serving at that time.
Yeah. One thing I'd love to get your take on is, there's a lot of different tools, especially for HR professionals or managers or leaders. There's a lot of different tools out there that use AI, that incorporate AI to help people do their jobs. And, without customization right out of the box, sometimes those tools can unintentionally screen out or potentially have a negative impact on the neurodivergent community, or people who maybe think differently, process differently, speak differently, etc. And we talked briefly about how there's a tool that may capture and score the video of someone presenting or sharing information based on their body language, their eye contact, their ability to sit still, whether they're stimming and stemming, etc. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and if there's any words that you would share with employers who are thinking about some of those tools.
Yeah, so I just served as a roundtable presenter at the National Career Development Association here in Atlanta. And my talk was about how HR leaders use these tools. And in my personal opinion, again, I don't think it's anything wrong with using these tools, but if you're going to sit down and pull it out of the box, you want to test it. You want to have others to test it. I know there was a study where, and I'm not going to say the name of the AI tool, but there was actually a study that if you use the word disability or any association with disability on your resume, this tool actually weeded you out. And so we want to make sure as HR professionals that we are testing it, we're asking questions, we're giving feedback to the developers, and we're tweaking it as necessary. So, understand what you've purchase, but also test it, because it's not foolproof. AI is programmed by humans, and as humans, we sometimes have our own way of thinking, our bias, if you will. So we have to test these things that we're purchasing, because sometimes they could do more harm than good.
Yeah. I love that. One of the things that we've uncovered with some of our partners who do use these tools is to look to see if the developer of the tool has put out any guidance on customization. There are many tools that have modules that can be turned on or turned off that may trigger anxiety, such as a visible countdown timer that may sit in the corner, or even things like automatic scoring for body language or for eye contact.
Yeah.
And if they can't, one thing that I recommend a lot is allowing the individual to practice. So if you're using it as an interview tool, oftentimes there are practice sessions that a person can do just to figure out their own setup. They may be using other accessibility tools, and we want to make sure that those integrate with those. So I think it's really important, and I so appreciate the work that you do to really encourage employers to think about that and think about, can we make these tools accessible for more people, even if they are not yet an employee or yet a customer of the organization.
Yep. And I even tell the individuals that I coach that you want to always understand or how to identify accommodations requests. If you need to stop it, this is not working, who do I contact? Because often these things are done online and you're usually at home in a room by yourself and there's no one there. So who do I contact if I have problems? And always be proactive rather than reactive. Like you ask, what are the accommodations I could have? Now that would require disclosing, but at the same time, you take a chance in going through the whole interview process and not having what you need. So again, that's a personal decision.
Yeah.
Another thing I've noticed is that a lot of employers now are using it to AI to evaluate a person's performance. And so I know a lot of retail, a lot of fast food. How are you looking? Are you smiling? Are you providing extra communication? And so someone who's neurodivergent may not be able to do that or may not be comfortable with doing that. And so how do we understand back going to the whole person rather than the KPI?
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that. I was at the store the other day, a very large retailer, and I bought milk and bread. And as I checked out, it asked me the question, did the associate greet you? Did the associate smile? I'm like, I didn't need them to. I needed to get bread and milk. Like it was irrelevant to what my needs were and what I was in that store for. And I just skipped the survey, and now I'm kind of kicking myself for skipping the survey a bit, because you don't realize all of the points where you're asked to provide data that may impact somebody, sometimes really positively, but other times really negatively.
Yeah, it absolutely could.
But I was just on a mission. I needed bread and milk. I got 3 kids. I always need bread and milk.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my gosh. I also noticed in your background before the work that you done, you were a vocational rehabilitation counselor. I'd love to ask you if there are some lessons that have really resonated with you along the way, or if there's any lessons that maybe you've left behind as you've learned more in your journey.
So I was a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and then I became a vocational rehabilitation supervisor. And what I find myself doing a lot in both roles is really helping our clients or individuals, participants, to have that self-advocacy. And that is so important because whether you're trying to get employment, whether you're on the job, whether you're trying to transition, you have to be able to advocate for yourself to get what you need and understand what you need. So that was my biggest takeaway. It wasn't just providing a service, but I wanted to empower people. I didn't want to just provide a service. Whomever I come in contact with, that's my mission, to empower people and leave them better than what they were and more empowered than where they were.
Well, I think you're doing an incredible job of that.
Thank you.
So thank you for the work that you're doing. One thing I just want to touch base back on, in case our audience is on the fence about, the intersection of AI with them as an employee, is, my personal viewpoint is that we all use different tools to do our job. And that's how I view accommodations many times, is it's a tool that we need to do our job and to navigate the world around us. And I think AI should be a really useful tool for us, but AI shouldn't replace an individual or replace the humanity. I would love to pass that to you and get your thoughts overall.
I agree. We have to just be really careful. Even as a user, you want to understand how to use the tool. You don't want it to do the work for you. Like I was saying earlier, you want to be able to use your brain power. Like, for example, if I'm using it to write an article, I don't just say write an article. I really just sit down and I outline and I write out everything I want to include. And then I use the AI to enhance it. So we're, individuals, users, we have some responsibility as well to not become so dependent on the tools, but use them as an accessory to our own thinking, our own communication. Let them help us, but not dictate to us what we should do and think.
feel like that's like the title of a TED Talk right there. April, thank you so much. This has been such a fascinating conversation, and I know that our audience is really going to appreciate your insights. Before we wrap up, I'd love to introduce our audience as ways to connect with you, to follow you, to hear more about the work that you're doing. How can they do that?
So definitely can follow me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place at this time. And just my first and last name, linkedin.com/IN and then /April Ogden. I also have a newsletter on Substack, Career 360, and that's where I say I bridge the gap between careers and humanity. And those are the two biggest areas where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, you'll have to let us know if your Substack followers go up. I know they're going to.
I hope so. I'm trying to build it.
Well, thank you so much, April. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the NITW Podcast.